Hi there, it's January the 23rd, and we're continuing our journey through the good news of Matthew, and we are in chapter 15 today and reading the first 28 verses. Jesus comes in contact and up against again the Pharisees here. The Pharisees are questioning Jesus keeping or not keeping to their traditions, the traditions of the fathers. They question Jesus about the washing of hands. Now, there's nothing wrong, obviously, with washing hands before meals. It's good practice, it's good hygiene. Most of us would see that and do that. And actually, Jewish people today, or observant Jewish people, will always wash their hands, and as they wash their hands, say a blessing. Again, a good thing to do. The problem here is that the Pharisees are using this as a means of interposing their power over people between them and God. They're saying that if you don't do this, God will reject you. Now, Jesus actually turns things around and he asks them a question. They are busy criticizing Jesus and his disciples for their not adhering to these traditions, but he turns it around and he says, wait a minute, you are hypocrites. And that word, by the way, hypocrites, it means something that's hidden, someone who hides behind. It really refers to the masks that an actor would wear in Greek theatre. And he says, you're wearing a mask, you're hiding behind a mask, you're not really showing your true colors, because actually you have made mockery of the Torah, where the Torah says honor your father and mother. You've put in a tradition that says if someone gives a gift to the temple that's the equivalent of what they would have spent on their mother and father, then that's good and they have no further obligation. This, of course, was a way round the law, and the Pharisees were very good at finding ways round the law, at making sure the law was obeyed in letter, as it were, but not in heart. And so Jesus says, actually, your hearts are far from God. You are doing these things, but your hearts are not close to God. You're actually trying to find ways around God. And then he says to his disciples and to the people, he says, beware of this kind of living. He says, it's not what goes into someone that makes them unclean, because after all, what goes into us goes through us and comes out. It's not that which makes us unclean. Jesus says it's what comes out of the heart. It's the murder, it's the lies, it's the adultery. It's those things which actually make us unclean before God, which make us unholy. And Jesus' disciples are asking him to explain this, and Jesus is surprised that they can't get hold of it. And he says again, what comes out of someone is what's important, how our heart speaks, because out of the heart, out of the fullness of the heart, the mouth speaks. So it's just a warning to us not to get caught up with outward observances, thinking we're pleasing God by that, but it's actually an internal question. It's really about the inner motives, the things that are going on in here. And then towards the end of the chapter, Jesus comes to the area of Tyre, up beyond actually the areas of Israel itself, onto the coast, the north coast. And a woman comes to him there, a Canaanite woman. So she's not a Jew, and she asks for Jesus to heal her troubled daughter. Her daughter is under oppression from evil powers. Now, Jesus does something very shocking, maybe very surprising. At first he refuses, and it is interesting, the woman calls him David in Greek, son of David, and she asks him to have mercy on her. So she's appealing to his Jewish messiahship, and here she is as someone beyond the pale of the people of Israel who is appealing to Jesus' Jewish messiahship. And Jesus actually responds to her in one sense as a Jew would to a Gentile, saying, no, these things are reserved for the people of Israel. But the woman persists, and she says, Jesus, have mercy on me. And Jesus uses this very strange picture. He says, why should the things for the children, meaning Israel, be given to the dogs, meaning non-Jews, Gentiles? And maybe this is Jesus using a proverb or using a saying that was used by other Jews of the time. But the woman pushes through and she says, but even the dogs can eat the crumbs that fall off the table. And then Jesus relents. Jesus steps back, and maybe Jesus is just provoking her to push through in her faith, and he heals her daughter. This is the second time in Matthew, after the centurion that we read about. This is the second time that Jesus interacts with a non-Jewish person, with a Gentile, and it's an indicator that there is coming a new day when the doors are opened beyond Israel, when there is going to be God's presence and God's blessing and God's healing for those further than just the Jewish people, God's people, who is established by their grafting in and their adopting in to the promise that God has made to Abraham. Have a very good January the 23rd.